Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is episode 4 of Know Your Author series, and today we have with us Shereen Malherbe. She's author of Jasmine Falling, The Tower, and The Girl Who Slept Under the Moon series. She is British Palestinian and she has lived 10 years in Middle East, and now she lives with her family in UK. So let's find out more from Shereen herself. Welcome. Everyone, welcome to Talk with Sana, and today we have Shereen Malherbe with us. She's a British Palestinian author. She has written 3 books: Jasmine Falling, The Tower, and The Girl Who Slept Under the Moon. The Tower is a critically acclaimed book. It's required as an academic reading in a U.S. University on a course of Muslim voices. Currently, she's living in England with her 4 children, and we want to know more from Shereen. Let's say what Shereen has to tell us more about herself.
Hi, Sana. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So tell us more about yourself. How do you plan your day? What do you do? How do you plan your writings?
I think it's been difficult in lockdown because that's changed everything because I've had the 4 children at home all day. So that's changed things. So my work's really been on hold for a few months. I've just had a notebook and just wrote things down as they came into my head, but really had to put that aside. But it reminded me that we have to carve time out as mothers, as people who work and have other careers and other things that we do. Sometimes the things that we enjoy doing or that we feel passionate about doing are put to the bottom of the pile. And I realized about halfway into lockdown that for me it was really important that I still had some time, so I began to get up an hour earlier before the children so that I could fit my writing in there. And it reminded me, actually, when I wrote Jasmine Falling, my 2 children were 2 and 3 then. So it's actually what I'm used to doing, waking up before they do and squeezing in an hour to write. And I think J.K. Rowling said that you have to really be protective of your writing time. It's so easy to say, oh, someone's invited me out or I have something else to do. But if you really protect even an hour a day, it can really help to move your projects along and take them towards the finish line. So I think protecting your writing, no matter your scenario, is really key. And that's what I've been trying to do in lockdown.
That's great. That's amazing, actually. And we want to know, how was child Shireen? How was the girl Shireen?
Well,
How
I
was
mean,
your
it was funny.
childhood?
I was saying to my husband the other day, my mum said she used to worry about me because she would just find me in my room and I would just be reading books for hours on my own. And I did remember that I have always loved reading and I've always loved books. But I wouldn't say I was an introvert. I'm not too quiet or too shy because I'm actually one of 8. So I have lots of siblings. So we're used to a crazy house. So I've always liked reading for the escape, and it's just something I've always enjoyed from when I was young. I've always written collections and stories, and I guess it only stops when I became an adult and got into work, and I didn't really find anything that I suppose stimulated me creatively. So I always wrote as a child. I always read as a child. And then I suppose I revisited that once I was married and returned to my heritage homeland of Palestine with my husband. That's really the key moment that ignited my writing again. And that was about 9 years ago now.
So you were born in Palestine, or you were born in UK?
I was born and raised in the UK with my British mum, and I didn't really discover much about my Palestinian heritage until I was in my 20s and travelled there. I mean, even at school, people would say, oh, where are you from? And I was like, oh, my dad's Arabic. And they would say, where? And I was like, Palestine. I didn't really know much about it, but I think it's something that I discovered later on. But I think it was a good time for me because I'd had a completely different perspective in the UK. So when I went to Palestine, it was such a contrast to life in the UK. That's really inspired me to sort of capture that journey because it was so different to what I'd experienced in the UK. And I thought, you know, if it's different for me, it must be different for a lot of people. And because Palestine is occupied territory, not a lot of people get to travel there. It's not like you can just hop over, or you would even see the Palestine that I could see.
I mean, my view of Palestine is from the authors that I'm reading. So
Yeah.
you're the first Palestinian author that I read, you know, and I
Oh,
read it. But I
and
have traveled to Israel, I think in 2008 for work. So I could still see those places, you know.
yeah, and I think
It was
that's,
easy to connect.
yeah, that's what I think is key. It's when me and my husband were there, my family's lived in Jericho, which is Ariha in Philistine, for generations. And we actually got lost on the streets one day, and we said, oh, where's the Zagari house, which is my maiden name? And they pointed to the house because they know where it is. And as we were lost, sort of walking through the streets, we found a tourist bus pulled up with all blacked out windows, and everyone piled off the bus, took a photo of a tree that Isa, or Jesus, Elohim, was supposed to have stood under. Then they piled on the bus and drove off. And, you know, we sort of stood looking at each other thinking, tourists do come here, but they don't really see what we get to see living with all my family locally in Palestine. And we had some notebooks with us at the time. They were just full of stories translated from Arabic into English and from my family. And there were so many that I thought, I need to actually capture this because my children are young. What Palestine would they see when they return? It would probably likely be very different because the nature of the occupation means that the history is eroded very quickly. The tradition of storytelling, it's not always oral. There's some amazing Palestinian writers out there. But some of my family stories are, and I wanted to capture that as it was on that first trip. So that's what inspired me to write Jasmine Falling.
Now I can see you there in the Jasmine Falling.
Yeah. There's some similarities. She's also British. Oh, that's lovely.
I really love the cover and the way it's written. And I really enjoyed reading it also. It's one of my favorite reads. So whenever somebody asks me about a Palestinian author, I always tell them about this book.
Oh, thank you. Well, the funny thing is, because it was so long ago, I feel like personally I have seen another Palestine now as we've gone on. You know, I started writing this when I was pregnant with my eldest son. He's now 10, so obviously yes, where's the time gone? But as time passes, so do the stories and so do the situations, which is why now I'm working on my third novel, which is back in Palestine. And it's really interesting for me to see that shift in my perspective of what's happened over the last 6-7 years. And that's just as important to me. And I know that one of the questions you were going to ask me is, how do you know when a book is ready? And I think that's really key for authors, because my university lecturer said to me once, sometimes you can never finish a work, you will just keep going and keep changing it. So I think the key is to try to know what it is you're trying to capture, and when you feel that that is done, release it, publish it, and it allows you to move on, because your perspectives will always change. So you know, I held on to Jasmine Falling for so long. And I refused to let it go. And my husband said, you have to publish this now because you need to move on. You know, I was like, oh, I know, but it's an optimistic book. It's very youthful because I was at that
why I want
age.
to say it has so much freshness to it, because all the books that I read were non-fiction and they were really serious, and you know, they were talking about the conflicts, but this one came as a fresh breeze of air that you can still, you know, read the stories and there's still hope in it.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I chose fiction. There were so many non-fiction books you can read about the conflict, and I thought, how can I get to an audience that maybe wouldn't pick up a book on the Palestine-Israeli conflict, but maybe they would pick up a novel that has all the structure and expectations of a novel, because it is for enjoyment. You know, you expect certain things as a reader. You want to be taken on a journey, you want to be immersed in it, and Charlotte, at the end, you want to feel differently, to have experienced something different. And I know in one of your posts you said that you love reading because you get to travel without leaving the house, and that's hopefully what I wanted to do with that, because how many people get to experience things firsthand? So if you can give them that through a fiction book, just allows you that extra room for it to be made up in some parts, but enough that it gives you an authentic representation. It's actually really funny because my dad came to me to a literary evening in Jerusalem at the El Hekawati Theatre. The English translation is The Storyteller. A very famous theatre in Jerusalem where all the writers and literary critics get together. So I was very nervous about going with my book. And the readers there actually congratulated my dad on getting out of prison. If you can remember in the book, the dad was in prison, but it wasn't actually based on the truth, that one. So they were saying, oh, you know, I'm glad that you're out of prison now. But it just shows those lines between fiction and, you know, your personal life do blur sometimes. And it's great that people are so invested that they actually, you know, thought that had actually happened.
No, it was really great, amazing book. I think I will go back to reading it again after the interview, maybe.
Oh, thank you.
So what is your favorite book?
Probably Palestinian author Hala Ahlan. Or Ahlan, yes. She wrote Salt Houses, which I loved. It stayed with me. I still think of it now. And she's just released The Arsonists, which I'm keen to read, her second book. But I do like reading Palestinian work, and I also love the classics. So I've just finished Jane Eyre and The Tenant at Wildfell Hall from the Bronte sisters, and I love the classics as well.
I love classics, especially if they're written by women authors.
Yes, yeah, and I love that, you know,
Jane Austen work. I love Jane Austen.
Yes, me too. And I think they stand the test of time. I mean, there's obviously lots of different issues when we look at them in sort of in different contexts, but I think if we take from it that these women were sat writing these books, they got many rejections, the publishers didn't really want them, or when they had them they barely sold any, and they've become classics. And I think that's really inspiring for women authors, or, you know, any authors that feel marginalized by the publishing industry, because your book, you don't know when is a good time for your books to be picked up and read, but they were so passionate about writing them that they had rejections and then just went back and wrote more stories. And obviously now they're famous because people are appreciating that perspective. And I think that's really inspiring.
Sometimes the reader's perspective and the publisher's perspective is not same, you know.
Yes,
I think they are still in the old mindset.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Have advanced.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because publishing, I mean, I answer a lot of queries from aspiring authors about, oh, how do you get published? And, you know, there's a lot of issues surrounding publishing, because publishing itself is a business. So it's designed to make money. And if you want a big publishing house, then they need to make a lot of money to pay for their staff and for everything that they do. They also have gatekeepers, you know, that work in these jobs that may not necessarily know what it is you're trying to do. I mean, with Jasmine Falling, I sent my book to lots of UK agents, and I came back from Palestine very much feeling like, oh, I'm going to share this. Yes, it's based in a lot of Muslim theology, but just as the Austen books are based in Christian theology, that never really changed their audience. Yet with Muslim books based in Muslim theology, it's almost like, oh, we're getting into niche now, and I'm not really sure that everyone will want to read it. But my argument against that really was that we're human and we have these shared experiences, and to be reflective of those, you will make decisions with Muslim characters in those different types of cultures that are based on those decisions. But what it did as far as the publishing industry was kind of pigeonhole me into a Muslim author for a Muslim audience. And I even got responses saying, can you change the characters so they're not Palestinian? Or, you know, I don't really know your audience. And at the time I was like, oh, I'm not really sure who that is, just young women, because that's who I wrote it for. And it really started my journey in Muslim representation, so I kind of fell into that. And then I began researching and writing for the non-profit organization Muslim Media Watch, and their role really is to look at how Muslim women are represented in the media and to critique that. And obviously, once you open up that spectrum of representation, it has so many issues. And I think that is obviously reflected in the books that are available on the shelves. You can get lots more Muslim authored books these days from big publishers, but we have to really look, are they still reinforcing stereotypes? What narratives are they still choosing above others? And I think that's a really key question to look at, and also for writers to consider, because we do have other platforms now. So do we write because our goal is to get into a big publishing house, but that might change our positioning on some issues? Or do we write what we feel is refreshing and authentic and stick to sort of a smaller publishing house, or even independently publish, in order to try and sort of change some of that narrative?
But I think as an author, I don't know, for me it's like to be more authentic and truthful to your own self and the voice that you want to raise, and that's how people connect with you, on that basis. Because if then if you're getting commercial, you're losing your authenticity.
Yeah, well, I remember actually a mentor of mine. He's an international photographer, and he helps a lot of Palestinian writers. And he said to me once, if you do sell it and you make a lot of money, he said, you won't feel the same as if you gift a copy that you love and you believe in. And that was actually really amazing advice for me starting out, because I think when you start out, you're so passionate. And I just remember I was so impatient and I just wanted everyone to love it and read it. And as over time, it's been like a decade now since I've been out in the writing world, and it's slow and it takes time, and you really have to focus on what it is that defines you as a writer. And for me, I've actually said no to one of the big 5 on a short story collection, because I was really unhappy with the editing, slant, and the contracts commission for the Muslim women writing these stories. And that was really hard, again, because you want to be associated with the big names and you want to have your book widely read, but if the positioning isn't authentic, then it's just not something that I personally want to be a part of, because I think there's too much of it, and I think eventually the readers will decide what it is they want to read.
Yeah, no, I really respect you on that perspective. And I also follow your post about representation and the struggles you face, while publishing your even second book. I see that the Tower is so critically acclaimed, and now it's taken by U.S. in one of the universities, for a reading course.
Yes, yeah.
To find publishing for this book?
Well, this was slightly different because I was already, let's just say, a little bit cynical about, getting books out there. And I suppose, again, it relates to the passion of why you're writing. And I remember with the Tower, I've lived in the UAE and throughout the Middle East for the past decade. I've only moved to the UK about 2 years ago again. Okay. And I was in the Middle East and I heard about Grenfell and the fire, the disaster. And I was also living in a country that has lots of apartment blocks. And I just read Elif Shafak's book, The Flea Palace. And this idea of lots of communities coming together in one place really gave me the idea for how we can use each other's strengths and use each other's diversity and actually use it as a positive celebration. And the Tower was really difficult because it follows a Syrian refugee. Syria and Palestine are quite similar in a lot of Syrians already Palestinian refugees, and there's lots of movement there. And when it sort of brought up lots of anti-refugee rhetoric after Grenfell, and I read a story about a Syrian who had died in the fire, and it just made me really upset that we had this lack of empathy. We had the Syrian boy dying on the beach, and everyone said it would never happen again. And then, you know, I just felt so passionately about wanting to create some empathy around different communities that I just began to write this tower as actually part of my university course, because I had lots of other stories to tell, but I felt like this one, I wanted to get the British perspective and I wanted to get the Middle Eastern perspective, and I wanted to put them together. And I chose the tower to do this, to show that, you know, we are living in societies now where it is very multicultural. People are moving all over the world, mixing with lots of different cultures and nationalities. And I really wanted to break down these barriers with sort of that Muslim and British interaction, because, you know, things that maybe you would know about if a Muslim man doesn't shake your hand, my character is offended and thinks, oh, he doesn't like her, or he won't come into the flat. We all potentially recognize that as something that's from Islamic culture and it's not considered appropriate, whereas the British lady was actually quite offended, so it gave those sort of amusing moments. But I wanted it just to be a lived reality, and to show how your faith actually determines your decisions. And I think because that was the reason for that, it has actually been described as how you write outside of Orientalism and as a perspective of the lives Muslims live every day. And I think because it's quite a, you know, we have my publisher in the UK, and they saw exactly what I was trying to do with that. So when I spoke to Beacon Books, I said, I am working on something, and I'll send you it over. And I remember it was Ramadan at the time. And I thought, it's just 2 chapters, I'll send it over. And they really could understand what it was I was trying to do. So they took that on. And I think afterwards, the feedback has been also appreciating the smaller publishers that are willing to take on these authentic narratives and, you know, be bold in telling them. So it was definitely, you know, a joint effort, and, you know, having these publishers that support writers in what they're trying to say and understanding what they're trying to say is also really important.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay, next question for you. What is writing for you? I know we have covered a lot already, but I want to know, what is writing for you? I always ask this to all the authors.
Well, I mean, for me, it's something that I do to channel my energy and my passion and what I think I need to share with the world. So whether that's trying to increase empathy or break down barriers, or trying to introduce Palestine to an audience in a more authentic way, that is my driver. I have 4 children, as you know. It makes me quite busy and I don't have a lot of spare time. So if I have something that I'm passionate about, I'm more driven to complete it. And at the moment, for example, with my 3rd novel, I'm going back to Palestine, back to the northern towns where my family live. And really what they experience on a daily basis is enough to push me to turn that into a novel.
No, that's great to know, really. And what you're doing is really great. I mean, you know, you have a vision. That's what I see, that you have a vision and you have your own, I would say, set of rules, and you have your own beliefs and you're working on that. So that's great to know, actually, you know, for as a reader's perspective, that how your author thinks, because you cannot write everything, you know, in a story.
No. And what do
To
you
know
think?
your author.
Because you've been interviewing, and I know you've done Rumkey, and I believe interviewed Papatia as well. And
Yes.
have you seen any insight yourself, knowing the author? Has it made you see our books any differently?
Yes, they do. I do. And I think people will also see it differently. For example, I didn't know about the story like Jasmine Falling, that you actually went to, you know, as then you went to that places, and I didn't see you there in the book as that girl.
Oh, really? Yeah. So we did visit all of them. We spent a lot of time there. And one of my favorite places is Temptation Mountain in Jericho.
And I didn't even know that you, I thought maybe you are from Palestine itself. Maybe you grew up there, you know, and you're just writing from somebody who is visiting. So it
Yes.
changed my perspective totally. And a lot of books, like I was talking to Papashia, and she told me one of the books that I really liked about her was the Doctrina series, where there is one, hijabi girl, and she's going and rescuing, and she's the hero. So she told me that she had a dream about
Wow.
that character, and then she thought, I have to work on it, and then she started building and developing. And she reads, like, I don't know, 60, 70 books in a year. She writes so many books, and she's publishing also. So I also talked about how she manages her time, that she
Yes.
has a planner and she do things and she plans very well.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think some people think, oh, it's writing, I'll just wait until I feel like it. But obviously, nothing really would get done. Maybe a few ideas. But this book, actually, Becoming a Writer, it's actually recommended, I think, by Hilary Mantel. So when she said it, I was like, right, I'm going to go buy that. And it's an old
I'm
book.
going to buy that too. Sure,
Yeah,
I will.
I'll put it up so people can
Becoming
see.
a
It is quite an old book, but it doesn't tell you how to write. It tells you how to become a writer. And it's all about your schedule, your focus, how you carve out time. And I think even for my literature degree, part of it was you have to write. I had to write short stories every 2 weeks. There was no, oh, I'm not really feeling inspired. You have to write. So you just get into this pattern of writing. And I think the first novel I did that with was The Tower. And because it was so structured, it really turned it into more of a process for me. So I'm not as intimidated when I approach a project now because I do it with that type of planning and focus.
No, that's great. That's great. I have another fun question for you now.
Okay.
What is your fun time?
Um, yeah, when I looked at this question, I was thinking, I
I
don't
mean,
even
for me, I
know.
also laugh because the mothers, they always say that it's the me time.
Yeah, it is, and but I am filling it with writing at the moment, or not even writing, just researching. Like I'm researching about Palestinian embroidery, tattoos at the moment, and I do enjoy that for my fun time. I enjoy the researching part of the book. I like calling my family and just saying, "Oh, what's the weather like in the winter?" Imagining it, hoping to travel there. But I would say if I'm talking completely outside of work, I do like the outdoors in the UK. I'm really enjoying being outside. Because I have 4 children, we need open spaces. So places like forests and fields and going for walks with them really is how I de-stress.
Yeah, no, walking for me also is like I need to walk.
Yes, me too. It clears your
And
mind.
yeah, it clears your mind. And when I'm not walking, I feel more stressed. So when
Yes,
I
me too.
start walking, it calms me down. My mind is clear. All the thoughts are gone. And I have more
Yes.
clear perspective when I come back.
Yeah, I think that's a really key thing. I was reading in the Don't Be Sad book. It's a transliteration of a very classic Arabic book. And it actually encourages you to go out in nature and to be around nature because it does have that calming effect. So I do try and do that as much as possible.
Yeah, and I want to know which major sites are your books available on?
Well, you can access all of them on my website, shereenmalherbe.com. But they are all available on Amazon. They're available via Beacon Books' own website, or you can order them from your favorite bookstore. But I think most people choose Amazon.
I think I choose Book Depository, I think. That's
Yes.
also, yeah, that's
Yeah, any major bookstores or any Amazon site worldwide, they're all available, including the new children's book as well.
and we already know that you're working on your third book.
Yes, and we also are continuing the work on the Migrant Children series. So this is
Yes,
the
we need to
first
talk
one,
about this book, yeah. The
and
girl who
then
slept under the
with
moon.
yes, and then we're doing another two because it's a series now. So you'll probably guess from the conversations on my other books, the children's series is a migrant children series. So we're looking at the experience of children moving to other countries, specifically from the Middle East to the West, and some of the issues that they're having in their belonging and identity, and really trying to anchor that in their belief system, because I think that's really important. When I spent 10 years in the Middle East, my children went to local schools so that they could learn Arabic. And then when they came to England, it was just such a culture shock. And I thought, oh, I don't really know, how to sort of deal with it. So naturally, I turned to storytelling. And had this idea for a child moving. And then when I began to research it, because all my basic ideas are built on research, I looked at the last figures. I think 2018, UNICEF said 17 million children are displaced around the world. And a lot of that is due to conflict. And a lot of the psychologists discuss that when children do move into other environments, so coming from the Middle East into Western environments, their identity and their belonging is really key in their integration. And I really wanted to sort of add to the literature around that.
And also for people, to be more empathetic to those kids, and the kids themselves, because if parents, they are more empathetic and they know that, there is a new child in the class, you have to be more nice and gentle, and you don't have to ask these questions, you don't have to say these things to them.
Yeah, and I think that's why storytelling can be so amazing and can actually break down the barriers, like you said, that the non-fiction maybe can't always, because a kid would pick up a book and then in the end, what the celebration is that we all sleep under the same moon. It doesn't matter where we're from, but throughout her journey, she tells them stories of the Middle East. She tells them why it's important that she's praying in a cupboard, why it's important that she wears the clothes that she wears. And I think it's through that breaking down of stories, if children read this from an early age and go, oh, I know now, yes, I know, the history and the background really relating to these children's experiences, they won't, not understand why they do certain things, why they want to pray, or why they wear a headscarf, or why they wear sort of their Palestinian dress. And all these barriers are broken down through the medium of telling stories. So I just think it gives you that lovely shared environment where children can sit together and they can discuss it and, just get out the benefits of that, really.
And also I see when they go to a bookstore and they see, these books, and they say, okay, that looks like my classmate, So they see a representation also that, okay, it's very normal to wear a scarf. It's very normal to have a brown skin. It's very normal to have those curly hairs, that it's just a part of diversity, and, everyone can be.
And it's making it exactly, the norm. I mean, my children, when I bought them the Let It Go book by Mufti Menk and Naima Roberts, and, they were like, oh, we say Alhamdulillah. Oh, we say Bismillah. And it's just that representation where they feel like they're included in these stories. And I've recently done a presentation with the illustrator for the Girl Migrant series, Sarah Nesty Willard, and she did Arab illustrations seminar, and was talking about the importance of books mirroring themselves. And Fawzia Galil, who wrote some really great children's books, has a PhD in children's literature, and she says, if they don't see themselves, they literally draw themselves as these Cinderella characters, as these Disney characters, even though that their skin color, their hair, or their clothes are completely different. They're profiling themselves as these major characters in books and films. And I think when you look, there's still so much work to be done in having a diverse bookshelf. I mean, I don't try and tackle subjects too far outside my own comfort zone, because I believe that those stories should be told by other writers. So I think what's really key is that any writers out there, or readers, read widely, and also writers, don't minimize your experiences. Find what you believe is unique and tell your own stories. And I think that's what most of my books sort of try and promote, this shared idea that we should all be sharing our stories.
Yeah, that's great to know, because I think I also talked to, her interview is not yet public, Khadija Abdul Haq, and she not recently, I think a few years back, she wrote Nani's Hijab. So there was like an incident in US that a teacher pulled off the scarf of one of the girl.
Oh dear.
And that girl was so scared, she couldn't say anything. And then Khadija saw it on the TV, and then she, that propelled her to write as that book. So it's great to know. I mean, I just know, okay, there is a book, but when I'm talking to the authors now, I know the idea behind those books, what is writing to them, how they read, how they manage their time. So I'm really enjoying these series.
Oh, good. I'm glad you've started doing it.
I am so happy. I mean, I didn't get that idea until COVID happened, Zoom happened.
Yes, then everyone's on
Zoom. This, because I was always limiting in my thoughts that I cannot do it because I live in Belgium. And if I want to have something like this, and I think people were also not used to watching online interviews. They're more where two people are sitting, in a studio.
Yes, and
It
it's all
changed the
changed now.
perspective. It changed the perspective. Now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is a normal thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me. I find it really hard to travel, because I have so many responsibilities at home. So I have been able to do a lot more because it's been online. So it's actually been a blessing as well.
Yeah, for me also to work from home is a blessing because I can manage my time. That okay, if I take like 2 hours right now, I can catch up in the evening. It's more
Yeah,
flexible way of
yes,
working.
that is good.
So thank you so much. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank you
your
for
time.
having
It's really great to connect with you, to talk to you, to know your thoughts, to know about the books that you wrote and the books that are coming. That the girl who slept under the moon, the series is coming. There is another book that you're writing. And do you have a message for your readers and the audience who will watch it?
Well, I think the message, once a reader reads a book, it's up to them. It's their interpretation, and the book really is meant for them. I think it's also, as a writer, you have lots of ideas that you put into a book, but for the readers, I just hope that from reading my books, you feel more positive, more enriched, or there's something that you walk away with that has made your life a little bit better than when you started.
Yeah, definitely. It has a positive, way of writing. I think every author has a unique style.
Yes, definitely.
I saw it in Jasmine Falling, so I'm always following you wherever you
Yeah.
are.
Well, I think
Uh,
that it
I
is
think that's how you build your audience. You build your relationship also, with the readers
yes.
and your
And I
fans.
think your style is something you find as
Yes.
you write more and as you discover what it is you're trying to say. So I also say to writers, experiment. It might not be a novel for you. It might be poetry. We have brilliant word art from people like Sahima Manza Khan. It doesn't have to be a novel. It can be short stories, poetry. Lots of different platforms now. So experiment, have fun with it, and find out what it is you want to say.
Yeah, it's really great what you're saying. It's so much, I would say, to take away from this interview for the readers or even for the writers, how you manage your time with 4 children, that you take your time in the morning and then, it's like a ritual thing. It
Yes,
has to be there.
we can do it.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I wish you great success with all your books, and I'm sure they will do great, inshallah.
Thank
And we
you,
will keep
Sana.
having this conversation with your new books or book discussions, or we will see how I will also grow. I don't know yet.
Yes,
I'm
well, I'll
just
be
starting.
watching.
So thank you so much. I will just